So hello, my name's Simon and I'm a member of the Plymouth Octopus team. And today I'm speaking on behalf of the team and our learning partners who we've been working with for the past year, Annette Dami of Dark Matter Labs and Jen Parkin from Skyspace, to develop a shared narrative for Plymouth. I don't have the time in this video to give you all of the detail of our narrative, and I hope that you'll be able to take the time to read it for yourself and absorb what we're saying. My job today is to share some of the logic that holds our narrative together. So Robin Wall-Kimmerer, the author of the book Braiding Sweetgrass, says that stories are among our most potent tools for restoring land, as well as our relationship to land. We need to unearth the old stories that live in a place and begin to create new ones, for we are story makers, not just storytellers. POP's shared narrative is an act of story making rather than storytelling. Story making is a collaborative process where we work together to share a story that we can all belong to. Narrative is another word for story, and stories matter. There are no vacuums with stories. If you don't have one, if we don't share one, then somebody else's story will take the space. I'll give you an example. This headline comes from the Plymouth Herald in the aftermath of last year's tree cutting on Armada Way. As a naturalised Plymouthian for 22 years, this headline represents to me a dominant Plymouth narrative. And that narrative comes in two parts. One, Plymouth is insignificant and substandard in comparison with other larger cities. Two, Plymouth is just always one more bold project or cutting edge building away from being comparable with other larger cities. Now, I'm convinced that we don't need to live by other people's narratives in Plymouth. I'm convinced that when Plymouth gets it right, it does so not as Barcelona, or as London, or as the Manchester of the Southwest, but as Plymouth in its own right. And for me, that's what it means to be more Plymouth. When we get it right as a city, we look and feel more like Plymouth in all of its complexity and all of its diversity, not more like somewhere else. Now, part of the reason that dominant narrative has so much power is because Plymouth is a city on the edge. Geographically, we're in the bottom corner, we're facing the ocean. We're a city with no south that's surrounded by moorland, and we're dependent on the A38 and the railway not flooding at Dawlish. We're on the edge of power, but we're also at the cutting edge of practice. For many families and communities in the city as well, we know that there is the harsh reality of being on the edge through multiple deprivation. But we also feel that Plymouth is a city on the edge because Plymouth is liminal space. The Oxford English Dictionary defines this adjective, liminal, as something or somewhere or someone who is characterised by being on a boundary or a threshold, especially by being transitional or intermediate between two states. Now, the easiest way to picture liminal space is by thinking of a Venn diagram. The overlap is a liminal space, the place where something is two or more things at once. And we see ourselves in Plymouth as the ocean city, the threshold between water and urban life. And Plymouth is a city of many expressions. There's military Plymouth, there's dockyard Plymouth, there's Marina Plymouth and University Plymouth, there's Pirate Plymouth and Bohemian Plymouth, there's Polish Plymouth and African Plymouth, there's Ukrainian Plymouth and Chinese Plymouth, and so on, all overlapping and intertwining and gathered under the grey clouds that unite us as rainy Plymouth. Every expression of Plymouth matters and brings a richness and a value to life in the city. We're a city on the edge as we stand in a liminal space between a now that feels broken and a deeply uncertain future. We know the headlines. We've seen the state of the climate report for 2024 that starts with the sentence, "We're on the brink of an irreversible climate disaster." We know that 25 out of the 35 planetary vital signs that get measured every year are at record levels. But how does that relate in Plymouth? This slide shows a projected map of Plymouth in 2040. Even with a rapid transition to a zero carbon economy, the blue areas of the map represent city locations we can expect to be below the annual flood level by 2040 due to rising sea levels and temperatures. The annual flood level is a measure where there is more than a 50% chance that an area will be flooded in any given year. So blue shaded areas include Royal William Yard, Babcock Docks and Princess Yachts, much of the Barbican, and the essential travel infrastructure of Lara Junction, Embankment Road and Marsh Mills. And it's a minute detail in an anticipated global revolution of infinite complexity. But what do you imagine changes in Plymouth if Embankment Road was regularly underwater? Meanwhile, despite the efforts of many talented professionals and workers across the city, we're finding that we are making little to no impact on ingrained inequalities and complex issues like social isolation. We conveniently forget that every component of our lives is interconnected to real people on the sharper edge of global socio-economic systems. We sweep our colonial mindsets under the carpet. Our solutions focus on trying to fix symptoms and single issues rather than tackle the root causes of poverty and the systemic abuse and manipulation of power. Our society has a nasty habit of treating people as human resources to be mined and stripped of their dignity. We tell each other a story that if we make every part of our lives, organisations and city as optimal as they can be, then things will change for the better. So we introduce competition into every area of society with the hopes of increasing efficiency. We specify objectives to keep us on task and monitor every piece of data for signs of continuous improvement and impact. And this works about as well as optimising Armada Way and then claiming that Plymouth is now Barcelona. We need new common ground to work together from. We've learned from all we've done as POP that it's never just about one great project or one award-winning organisation or one killer slogan or story. We hope to rebuild and rebalance a whole city culture that we share in common that looks and feels more like Plymouth. Liminal space is the building blocks of that common ground. It's not easy to step into liminal space. It requires resilience and a sense of reality. It carries a cost. Living well in liminal space requires radical congruence, deep empathy, and the vulnerability to risk being misunderstood or marginalised in the service of something important. The ability to step into liminal space and then go home is a privilege that is not afforded to everyone. But liminal space is the building blocks of common ground. We build by caring about relationships. We cannot solve our present problems or face our collective future without each other, and we need to start behaving like it. That's not news. We're not doing anything new, but we need to be brave and embody what we already know to be true. That's why POP cares so much about collaboration. It's why we've invested in learning how to build networks. It's why we care about capacity building so that organisations are equipped to share and play their part. It's why we keep talking about geeky, complex conversations about power and how decisions get made and who gets to be involved. POP are realising that for us to play our part in encouraging a culture that nurtures liminal space, our role has to adapt. And change is emotional, right? So first, here is what's not changing. POP are, and as long as we exist, will always be Plymouth's grassroots champion. We'll celebrate, we'll promote, we'll work to strengthen, connect and resource the grassroots. We believe in the vital and unique contribution that individuals and organisations and networks and communities make to Plymouth. Across the city, there are more people who are working at human scale, working for system change and incremental change, grounded in the realities and complexities of this place, than we can possibly count. And if that's you, then POP is for you, and we're with you, and we're actually what we are because of you, and we're knitted together with love by you. But POP recognises that this moment requires us to articulate another role. And it's a role that we've been functioning in for a while through Belonging Plymouth, but we can now be explicit about. We call that role system convening. And there are many different tasks that are involved in system convening, but to put it simply, system conveners start and carry conversations. See, even if the grassroots all come together, we can't meet every challenge that Plymouth faces. We still need healthy, rebalanced statutory bodies, bureaucracies and traditional institutions. We need every sector to be collaborating, speaking to each other and attached to the grassroots. See, it's tough for people in health or in education or in statutory sectors to step into liminal space because as a patriarchal society, they're expected to have all the answers. But liminal space provides a space to share power and to collaborate. Because if all the grassroots have is a critique and a challenge for people in other sectors, then there'll be no liminal space to build in and we will all suffer. So people in every sector need a welcome, they need empathy and championing as well as challenge. And there is a need for multiple organisations to hold the liminal space to let that happen, to keep the line of communications open. One system convener will never be enough. And we know at POP that there are plenty of other organisations in the city that can fill that role as well. However, because of POP's skills and our experience, we're well suited to act in this role. See, it's not just POP's job. It's not any one organisation's job to provide all of the solutions and leadership that we will need to be more Plymouth. If things get better, it's going to be because networks are leading across the city. We know that networks can be places of care in a violent world, and we believe that assets and resources can be shared equitably within community settings. We're committed to learning how that actually works in practice through continuing to do the thing that POP has always done, which is have a go and try to do something while other people are still talking about it. POP take heart from the fact that we're not alone. We know that Plymouth has an abundance of innovators and collaborators and instigators and carers who are community leaders with the city in their heart. We know that it's those people who help us to find a hope that is grounded in reality. One example of that is Nudge and the work that is happening in Stonehouse. I know I speak for all of POP when I say we're in awe of Wendy and Hannah and all of the Nudge team. They know what it means to step into a liminal space. They are literally reclaiming common ground to build a strong local economy and community in an area that is multiply deprived and make Union Street a street that the whole world loves again. Nudge are a great example of depth and work in sharing space and power, addressing multiple layers and challenges at the same time to create a radically different experience of what it means to live in Plymouth. We can learn from organisations like Nudge, and we want to collaborate and work alongside a whole range of different organisations across the city because we believe in this city and we want to find out what it means to become more Plymouth.